Hello, welcome to Post Colonial Space. I'm Masood Raja, and this is yet another video in preparation for my AP English class. Now, before I go any further, please do keep in mind that these videos are not endorsed by College Board and they are in no way affiliated with them. These are just my own reflections on an AP course that I will be teaching this fall. And these videos could be useful to you if you're planning to take or teach an AP Lit course, but also if you're generally interested in English studies. So today, building on my previous video about poetry, we are going to be talking about two important aspects of poetic language itself, right? And that is the use of literal and figurative language in poetry. Now, if you have watched my previous video, you remember that I had talked a little bit about Roman Jakobson's views about how the poetic language exists on a higher level of abstraction from the normal, everyday, literal language. So the figurative is a part of that, right? Now, to make a distinction between them, let's just say, and this is an example that Professor Raphael uses in How to Read a Poem, that if I say it is raining outside, right? So you can pretty safely assume that that is me literally looking out my window and telling you it's raining outside. Okay. Now, if I turn around and say it's raining in my heart, now that in no way we could take literally, right? Because first of all, literally, it doesn't rain in your heart. Now, depending on the culture in which you live, it is raining in my heart will have a figurative meaning, right? So if you live in the West where the sunshine is privileged, right, where summer is the season of romance, then you would read into that this person is sad, right? That is figurative speech. It is raining in my heart is metaphoric language, but also it's figurative speech. And the figurative meaning then is that I am sad. Now, if you live in India or Pakistan, if I say it is raining in my heart, it could be a sign of happiness. And the reason is because in South Asia, summer is not the season of romance. Summer is pretty harsh. It's the monsoons, the rains that are romanticized and that are associated with love. So even figurative language, of course, is not universal, and you will have to read it within its own context, cultural context in which it is invoked. Now, as we progress in this course, I will go into what constitutes figurative language, right? The metaphor, the simile, and all the other devices which are called figures of speech that poets use. And I will do separate videos on figures of speech as well. Now, also an important thing to keep in mind is that the literal and figurative, they work together in a poem. It's not like that you can say, let's take out the literal content of the poem and then go into the figurative content. They play sometimes harmoniously, sometimes discordantly with the literal and figurative meanings of the poem. Now, there's an example that Professor Raphael uses, and I'm going to read it. And this is staged as a farmer telling his wife or someone else that he's going out to do some chores. So it says, I'm going to clean the pasture spring. I'll only stop to rake the leaves away and wait to watch the water clear I may. And this is in parentheses. I shan't be gone long. You come too. Okay, so at one level, we could completely read these lines literally. Here is a farmer. He has to go and clean the pasture spring, right? And he'll rake some leaves away, pretty literal. And then there is a line, and wait to watch the water clear. I may. I shan't be gone long. You come too. Now that one line, and wait to watch the water clear, we can't really read it literally because, I mean, this is a practical farmer. He's going to go and clean the spring. Why would he wait, sit and watch the water clear? Right? Literally, it cannot be done. I mean, how long would it take for the water to clear as the spring flows? But he doesn't have time for that. So what it adds to these four lines is this figurative, reference to that maybe it's a fanciful farmer. Maybe it's a farmer who is inventing an excuse to go out, right? And maybe literally when he says, and I'll wait there until the water clears, means that he has more to do. And one part of it is just relax in the pasture or spend some free time there. But if you read the four lines carefully, the literal and figurative, they work with each other and completely come together to form the figurative meaning of the poem. So as a first step, why this is important to know is to ask yourself as you're reading a poem, just train yourself to think, okay, what could be the literal content of the poem and what is the figurative content of the poem? You don't have to like make a list of it, but knowing that would enable you to read poems more carefully and maybe more accurately. Because one mistake that we don't want to make as we read poetry is to read the figurative part as literal, right? In common speech too, idioms are a great example of figurative speech, right? Um, you know, if someone, if you like someone a lot and that person says something that's funny and you say, oh, you killed me. Now that obviously is figurative because what you mean is, hey, you made me laugh so hard. Similarly in the poems, knowing what is literal or what could be construed as literal and what could be construed as figurative is important because that will have an impact on how you understand the poem, how you read it, and how you understand it. Now, the literal and figurative is also, connected to what we call denotation and connotation. And I'll do a separate video on denotation and connotation. And when you link it to this aspect of literal and figurative language in poetry, it will become even clearer for you to understand this aspect of poetry. Now, also keep in mind that the figurative language isn't just specific to poetry. It's used in prose, it's also used in everyday speech, and even in everyday encounters, knowing that someone is not being literal, but they're being figurative is important because that helps us understand them better. So these are some of my thoughts on the literal and figurative language in poetry. Very simple thoughts. I hope these are useful. And then maybe I'll come back and expand on it with some examples and some readings. But I'm going to leave it here today until the next video in this series. Thank you so much. Please do share your thoughts and ideas and questions, and I'll be happy to answer them. Stay safe, take care of each other, and I will now see you next time. Until then, Peace and love.